Warning, before you guys watch this video, there will be spoilers in this video about the game, so make sure you have beaten the game or at least played it. And yeah, watch this video review after you beat Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Yo YouTube, what's good? Shout out to both my old and new viewers. It's been a minute, but before I get started with this video, please don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Enjoy! Metroid Dread just got announced for the Nintendo Switch, and I thought to myself, you know what? This is a good time to talk about Metroid, and just to be clear here, I've never beaten Metroid Prime 3 Corruption on the Wii. And yes, I know that the Prime series favors a more immersed first-person's perspective, where you get to see everything through Samus's eyes, while Dread is going back to the 2D style action platforming, fast-paced, action-heavy gameplay. I felt like this is it. This is finally the time for me to experience the greatness of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I am not what you would call a Metroid fan. Frankly, to be honest, I have very little experience with this franchise, and never quite understood what was so special about the Metroid games. I remember young Roguespirit used to just get lost and not know where to go or what items to use, and back then, I loved playing very linear style platformers of Nintendo games such as Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country, which was complex to me at the time as I didn't even know what buttons I was pressing. I would just play and enjoy these Nintendo games, and that's what I loved about Nintendo back in the good old days. Simplicity. I remember first playing through Super Metroid and it felt like a more mature, darker Nintendo game, and it just wasn't for me at the time. This game did not remind me of Mario and Donkey Kong at all. The music was tense, the atmosphere was dark, the main character was very mysterious, and the alien creatures were weird, and I didn't understand what the hell was going on with the story. I kept getting lost and didn't know where to go or what to do, and I kept dying, and the game felt very punishing at times. However, as the years rolled by and as Roguespirit became more wiser beyond his years and gained some levels as a video gamer, he eventually gave Super Metroid another try on the Super Nintendo on the Nintendo Wii system thanks to its online virtual console downloadable games, and man, he realized that he missed out on a very great and hardcore gaming experience growing up and immediately replayed the game from the start all over again. You know, he just had to make sure this feeling of greatness, bliss, and shock that he felt inside his very small heart was pure and the real deal. And oh man, damn, this was it. This was true love. Fast forward some more and I eventually got my hands on the Super Metroid Prime series. And although these games had their flaws, like a lot of backtracking in the end game sections, I still enjoyed my experience with these games, and I do go back and replay Metroid Prime a lot. And Retro Studios did a fantastic job with this trilogy. I can't wait to see what Nintendo and Retro are going to do with Prime 4. So you guys are probably wondering, why am I reviewing Prime 3 Corruption instead of the first two games in the Prime series? After all, isn't that backwards? Well, I have a good reason. Let me explain. First of all, I have already beaten Metroid Prime 1 and 2 so many times, and these games are still fresh in my head, and I've never played Prime 3, so I thought, why not start with the last game in the Prime series, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. It is the only Metroid game I have never played up to this point, and it was because it was on the Nintendo Wii. And I remember all the Wii games all being centered around gimmicky motion controls, and that is the reason I skipped it, because I knew that Nintendo was going to include a lot of it in Metroid Prime 3. I remember I was over at my friend's house watching my friend play this game, and I was immediately turned off by the Wii motion controls, and it looked like the gameplay centered and focused on trying to please more casual gamers, which is very good for people who don't play a lot of video games and just want to focus on the overall experience rather than being challenged by the gameplay itself. I remember my friend being annoyed and irritated, I swear. Every time he had to push a button to use an elevator, or whenever he had to push a lever on a switch, you had to participate and follow weird movements with the Wii Remote and nunchuck. And to me it looked silly and like a waste of time. I wanted to play with the traditional GameCube controller, and I was kinda disappointed that there was no option to play with the GameCube controller instead. Well, that's how I felt, at least back then. But now, replaying this game made me realize that I was wrong. Very wrong. And now, I don't think I can go back to a GameCube controller when it comes to replaying the Metroid Prime games. I'm very excited for you guys to join me as I finally get a chance to play through this adventure for the first time ever, and hopefully I'll get that fresh full-on Metroid experience. Getting lost, traversing alien planets, searching for all the new upgrades and gadgets that will help me throughout my adventure in outer space, and feeling that dread when I just know that Ridley will pop out of nowhere with that screeching scream of his ready to bite my head off as I jump and avoid his attacks as Samus Aran, the awesome badass bounty hunter, until I finally get a chance to aim some beams and missiles at that weird wannabe Yu-Gi-Oh! Crazy dragon monster wannabe summon lookalike, and finally putting my controller down and giving Samus the thumbs up she deserves while she gives the players a thumbs up as well, followed by Samus blasting off into deep space until she is out of sight, with a very satisfying text which reads, "Mission completed." Well, looks like it's finally time to turn into a morph ball and roll deeper into this review. What I love about Metroid Prime 3 Corruption the most is the epic feeling of watching a hit blockbuster movie that goes for a more cinematic experience rather than to figure it out as you play and read through scanned lore so that you can slowly put the pieces together, which is present in the earlier games from this series. We now have other new characters that now interact with the bounty hunter herself, such as the Silver Surfer ripoff named Rundaz, and this purple girl named Gandria, who basically has the same ability to clone herself as anyone, exactly like Mystique from the X-Men series. Her boss fight was awesome though, no cap. Now I know that most people have complained that game developers should have given Samus her own dialogue and should have spoken to the other characters when interacting with them, but I don't think it is necessary, and not because of other M. No, in fact, I think that Samus not having any dialogue in this game makes her seem way more mysterious and in control of her emotions, and I really believe that Samus is this crazy bounty hunter who means business. She just stays focused on the task and her only goal is to complete her given mission and move on to the next one as a true bounty hunter should. I enjoyed watching how specific scenes and story events unfolded and played out with these new characters, especially when you get to see them in action, showing off their special abilities and powers as they fight off the space pirates. Eventually, these characters soon become infected and corrupted by Phazon, thanks to Dark Samus showing up, and that includes Samus herself. And as the story goes on, the Phazon eventually corrupts them and they turn on Samus and abandon each of their own mission, which is to destroy all of the Leviathans, which are basically Phazon seeds, which corrupts and impacts planets and species alike, leading to destruction and chaos. The bounty hunter Samus Aran is the galaxy's last hope, and what really stood out is how the Phazon itself is slowly corrupting Samus herself, and if she goes beyond the point of no return, then she too will meet the same fate as her corrupted teammates and become fully corrupted, thus turning into a dark Phazon corrupted evil version of herself. You can even tell how this Phazon is slowly corrupting Samus as well during certain cutscenes. I know that some would have probably enjoyed a more isolated feel where it's just Samus by herself stuck exploring a mysterious alien planet, but I really enjoyed the more cinematic moments during the story of Prime 3, and I would like to see it return for Prime 4. The gameplay is where it's at over here. You aim with the Wii remote to shoot enemies and scan objects and shoot missiles, you know, all that good Metroid stuff. However, now Samus gets a new gadget called the Grapple Lasso, which can be used to latch onto enemies or objects using the Nintendo Wii nunchuck controller and mimicking a pull with the nunchuck in your left hand, which will disable enemy shields or expose a boss's weak points, and later on you will have access to the Grapple Voltage move, which allows Samus to latch onto said enemies or switches and either discharge energy or absorb energy, which also restores a bit of health by the way, which will grant you access to a previous unreachable unexplored area on the map, as well as reveal hidden collectibles that you can now backtrack and collect. There is also the grapple beam, which when used will allow Samus to swing across large gaps, which made me feel like Indiana Jones. Yeehaw! There are a lot of new abilities in this game as well. You have the ice missiles, which are used to create platforms, slow down enemies, and helps you open up white doors. The Morph Ball is super fun here thanks to all the abilities you get as well, while in the Morph Ball form. You get the Morph Ball Boost, which allows you to boost yourself up to reach higher platforms and to activate platforms and rotate them during puzzles, and the Spider Ball, which helps you navigate up walls thanks to its electrical magnetic ability, which allows Samus to stick to metal walls like a spider. The Hyper Ball is a phase-on powered attack which, when the plus button is held down and once in hyper mode, allows you to discharge phase-on electrical energy which damages any enemies that is near Samus and is useful for crowd control when you become swarmed by enemies. The Screw Attack is back, and man, I love using this ability as it can help you traverse across huge gaps and even allows Samus to wall jump and platform her way up. Speaking of platforming, there is a lot of it in this game and I love it. You can use the B button to jump, and you can press the B button again to perform a double jump to reach higher platforms. Also, the edge grab is pretty cool too. If you ever see the edge of a platform that has a green glowing color, you can just jump towards it to automatically perform an edge grab. The new beam power-ups are pretty nice, and once again they are automatically stacked on top of each other, so you won't need to manually switch between beams. It's pretty simple, just aim the Wiimote to where you want to shoot and go trigger happy. The Plasma Beam can allow you to melt metal objects, and once you get the Nova Beam, you can combine it with the X-Ray Vision, allowing you to quickly dispose of enemy threats, and is super useful against Omega Ridley. You can sidestep to avoid enemies or a boss's attacks, and you can hold down the plus button to enter hyper mode and just go nuts. In fact, I would say this game feels more action shooter heavy than any of the other Prime games, because the gameplay makes you use this new hyper mode feature a lot, especially against enemies who can also use hyper mode and deal massive damage to you unless you yourself enter hyper mode to fight back and take them out. When enemies enter hyper mode and take a lot of hits to kill, they can become sponge bullets that take a lot of damage and just prolong the fight, making the enemy encounters longer. The multi-seeker missiles allow you to lock onto multiple targets and send out missiles to attack all of your chosen targets all at once. I want to talk about Samus's ship because man, I love the look of it, and it just looks badass and suited for the world's best bounty hunter. You can access and order Samus's ship with commands such as ordering your ship to attack with missiles, and later you can get a ship power-up like the ship grapple beam, which can allow Samus's ship to lift up heavy objects and then command the ship to drop off the heavy object in order to solve puzzles, and you can even find ship landing platforms scattered within each planet, which allows you to fast travel to other areas on the planet, and you can even use Samus's ship to save your game and restore your energy, and you can also travel to other planets as well. There are some hidden loading screens which usually just show Samus flying her ship, but these load times are not that long and I didn't mind it. It did give it that Metroid feel as well because each game usually has these kind of loading screens, like Samus standing in an elevator waiting for it to reach its destination. Later in the game you can even unlock a transport train system which, when summoned, you can enter it and travel to another station within the world you are exploring. The boss fights are hit and miss, some being very good while others being easy and too repetitive, but overall very satisfying to defeat, as you always usually are rewarded with the upgrade which will allow you to further progress into the story. Some boss fights felt so epic and grand, especially since most of the boss fights will be against Samus's corrupted phase-on friends, who are long gone, and fighting them one-on-one felt more personal and epic to me, even though I didn't know these guys for long, and they're really only in a couple of cutscenes, but it works here, seeing how cool they were during the intro of the game when they used all of their special abilities, and now we get to go up against them. I love video games. The cool thing is though, at least the boss fights will have you use most of your abilities, so you will have to think on your feet sometimes, or you can just scan a boss up and read the text to discover a weakness. Speaking of scanning things, the scan visor is back in Metroid Prime 3 from Prime 1 and 2. You can use it to scan up hidden lore and documents, and even scan each enemy in order to get their full description and discover what they are weak against. The X-ray visor allows you to see hidden code panels behind walls and reveals enemy weaknesses, which is pretty neat. The command visor grants you access to deploy and use Samus's ship abilities to help with puzzles and order bomb attacks, and you can even use it to land Samus's ship when you reach a landing site platform. The real star of the show here, however, is the exploration. Traveling to Elysia's Skytown, which you will have to use zip lines in order to move to area, and these cannons which can blast Samus sky high onto the opposite section of a map all the way to the pirate's home world base. The atmosphere is fantastic and really immerses you into the lore and worlds of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. The music is pretty spot on and it fits the dark tone of exploring hostile alien planets in deep dark outer space, and Retro Studios really understands how to create beautiful environments for the player to explore that are really vibrant and imaginative. Good stuff. Now, Metroidvania games usually always have you pausing to look at your map and plan the best pathway to your next goal, or to backtrack and discover new hidden areas and collectibles like energy tanks and missile upgrades, and in Metroid Prime 3, you will be doing this a lot. But it does feel more accessible and streamlined in this game, and it does make the overall experience feel just a little bit more linear compared to the other Prime games. A message prompt will usually tell you where and what to do, much like in Metroid Zero Mission, which I actually really enjoyed. I loved that I could just lay back and not use a guide for once, and it made me feel even more immersed into the gameplay and story and exploration. The graphics are still visually amazing to look at, and the artwork really makes these desolate alien hostile planets a thrill and joy to explore. So I'm glad to find that the graphics from the Wii era still stand the test of time, and Retro Studios really knows how to create memorable environments with the atmosphere to match. One thing positive I have to mention here is that in Metroid Prime 1, you had to go back and find all these artifacts, and that was the only way to reach the end of the game. But in Metroid Prime 3, you only need to find 5 energy cells out of 10, I believe. And that really made the endgame feel that much better to me, and honestly, it felt better paced overall. Now, I only have minor flaws to point out here. I think this game is way too easy, and I think if it had the difficulty of Metroid Prime 2, that would have been appreciated. And yeah, I know Hyper Mode is unlocked after beating the game, which does increase the overall difficulty, but that's just something I felt like I had to point out. I also have to say that again, some of the boss fights were hit and miss. Some were way too easy and usually just consisted of me trying to wait for a boss to finish his pattern so that I could expose a weak spot and just hyper blast away, and I wish the final boss could have been more epic and grand and over the top. I felt let down compared to other final bosses from the Metroid series, which were amazing and even had me on the edge of my seat. But in Prime 3, I never felt like I was in danger or cautious. I felt way too overpowered by the end as well. I used to think that the Wii Motion Plus controls sucked, but now I realize just how innovative they were to the overall experience and really pulled and immersed you into the gameplay. However, there's still times when the Wii motion control sections can be glitchy, or just wouldn't respond to my movement gestures, but it's just a minor flaw. The game length is fair, and the overall campaign mode didn't feel short at all. It felt just right, but I do wish we just had maybe one more planet to explore. And if they included more newer upgrades, which didn't feel like knockoffs from the other abilities from the earlier games, that would have been cool too, but you know what, it's all good. I guess this is just more of a personal wish than a flaw. I really enjoyed my time with Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and if you have never played a Metroid game before or want to experiment, then I would say start with this game first as a newcomer. The characters, the desolate alien planets, the atmosphere, the music, the gameplay, all these elements combined make this one of the best gaming experiences you can have on a Nintendo console, and Metroid Prime is one of the best Wii games ever made. I can't recommend it highly enough, and I can't wait to help the bounty hunter Samus Aran complete her next mission when Metroid Dread comes out this October. Thanks again for watching, guys. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and share this video with your friends and family, and subscribe for more content. Well, that's it for me today. I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Roguespirit Reviews. Take care, everyone.